Disclaimer, editing Caster here. When I created this video, I didn't realize that watching this video with your own eyes is less visually sensitizing than watching paint dry, so I'd recommend this more as an audio experience. When I ask the viewer to look at the tier list on screen, i.e. when I say something like second to last row on a tier list, then you probably should do so if you want to see the specific cards to take and not to take. With that out of the way, here's the long-awaited, in parenthesis, Part 2 guide. What is up, gamers? Welcome to part 2 of the Spire 80% unseeded single character speedrunning guide. I'll discuss other categories in here somehow, but single character unseeded is what I'm gonna be mainly discussing here today. So this is gonna cover the benefits of learning the characters and strategies, state of subs, and what they mean for character strategies, and the individual character strategies, you see. Now, why should you learn the characters and strategies, right? You know, what's the point? Well, learning the optimal strategy is optimal, you know. It allows you to go as quick as possible, recognize what cards are bad, recognize what cards you should take, and when to stop taking cards altogether, stuff like that, you know. You want to go quick, right? That's the entire point. So, yeah, it's pretty, you know, learning it is integral. It's half the battle, really. Learning the art of cards HG1 allows you to take those cards quicker, and, you know, not take the cards that you don't want even quicker. You know, you go to the next node because all the cards on screen are shit, right? And that is integral, especially when you get higher up the leaderboard. Now, by learning the cards, and by playing those a lot of runs especially, you won't react as much to finding those cards. See, there's a lot of times I've noticed myself and other streamers and runners, they lose time because they get the thing they want, the card they want, and they get excited and then they panic, right? And panicking is bad, because panicking loses time. Panicking makes you make mistakes. So by learning the heart of the cards, and then the heart of the cards, by learning the cards art and playing enough runs, you'll eventually become numb. Which I know kind of sounds sadistic, but trust me, it's good for running. And by learning the strategy, again, you actually know when to stop taking cards altogether, which allows you to move to the next node easier, but also allows you to not make wrong decisions by taking too many cards and making your deck less good than it needs to be. So, before we get into save setups and like the characters, things or whatever, we have to look at the character unlocks. So, on the top of every single character strategy, there will be a list of unlocks, which will be like 0401, for example, which means it will be level 4 silent and level 1 watcher, and level 0 on each of the other characters. Why isn't this important? Well, having less unlocks and characters is better, unless those unlocks are really good and help running. For example, getting Akabeko on Watcher on unlock level 4 is really good, and you don't care about adding Ceramic Fish as well, because Akabeko is just that good. But let's say you want level 2 Ironclad, Omamori, Prayer Wheel, and Trouble, all of those relics do nothing, and all they do is they just clutter the relic pool, which makes it harder to get relics like Akabeko that actually help you, you see. So, that's character unlocks, basically. Something else that you'll notice about the characters, the character strategies, is that they have 3 extra numbers. Let's say 221. But what does that mean? Well, so the bosses on a fresh save file are programmed to appear in a very specific order. So, the first time you encounter the Act 1 boss will be Guardian, second time will be Sham, third time will be Awaken 1, guaranteed. Until you until you meet that boss, until you're in the fight with them, it will stay like this permanently. Now, why is this important? Well, you can manipulate this, we can manipulate this, into forcing it so the bosses always appear in the way we want it. And this is important, right? Because the bosses, some bosses are just faster. For example, Slime Boss is way faster than Guardian and Hexios, because Slime Boss doesn't it has the least amount of health, and most of these strategies include AoE of some sort. But even if it's not that, Slime Boss just has 100 less HP, which is infinitely quicker. Champion Automaton, they both have more health than Collector, and Donodeka, it's an AoE fight, but even then, and most characters, except for the exception of one, wants to fight Donodeka, because it's basically only 250 HP compared to Time Eater having 480, or Awaken 1 having 300, and then another 300, which is even worse than just having 600, because you can't burst down in one turn. So yep, that's what the numbers on the top are going to mean. But how do you guarantee this? well, you use save setups, right? But, you know, it keeps the unlocks the same. You don't clog up the things, from what I mentioned before. You don't add relics you don't want, you don't add cards you don't want. So, when you usually level up, you can just use your save setup to get back to a game state where you didn't have those unlocks, right? Which makes running a lot easier and a lot more consistent. Same with the bosses. Theoretically, you can get the bosses that are optimal every single run, which is usually like Slime Boss Act 1, Collect Act 2, Deck Act 3. You know, depends on the character, of course, but... Right, but even if it wasn't that, you'd still have to reset a bunch of times to get to that point. But what save setups allow you to do is not get that, and get seeds that would usually be bad because they have unoptimal bosses, suboptimal bosses rather, to be good, because they have the right bosses and they have the right cards and everything. And they don't unnecessarily lose time because they have the wrong bosses. So that's what save setups do for bosses. It just makes runs infinitely more consistent. To be honest, if the bosses thing didn't exist, I wouldn't run this game, because it would be way too much resetting just to get the right bosses, just so you could save like an extra 10 seconds. And it allows you to have Nails on every run without having to reset over another seed. I do this because of paranoia mainly, to be honest, because right, for Niao's limit to appear guaranteed in Niao's options, you have to lose a run before the Act 1 boss, or reaching floor 16. Which is, you know, the main indicator. So, if you reach floor 16, without a save setup, you usually just have to reset over another seed, and then go into the seed after that. Which, I don't know, I just don't like skipping a seed if I don't need to. It's probably, like, placebo of some sort, and it probably doesn't matter, but it does to me. And why wouldn't you? The high-level runners use it. Mid-level runners, most of them use it. And why wouldn't you? It's completely legal. It makes your runs infinitely more consistent. It saves a lot of time outside of actually playing the game, of just resetting, right? So you don't need to spend as long actually playing the game to get the seed that you want. You know, you're just putting yourself at a big disadvantage by not using them, basically. But where do you get good legal files for the characters? Look in the description. There's a file setup thing set up by Ubla. Not only does it have a single character unseated 90%, it has multiple versions of those, more like different from the ones I'm presenting here. I just think these ones are the best for running each individual character. But it also has A20. It also has a 4 character if you're into that, which yeah, I do like now. But that's irrelevant. But yeah, look in the description. And you know, pick out the file setup you like, but I'm just going to provide the ones that I think are the best for speedrunning. Now, Ironclad. The unlock levels 0-1. It depends on your preference really, if you want Limit Break or not, that's the main thing. Limit Break is a card that doubles your strength. Of course it's good because you're trying to burst down the enemy with flex and strength in general, but it also closes the card pool by adding Spot Weakness and Heavy Blade, and sometimes Limit Break doesn't do anything. But yeah, the other things are pretty simple. For P-Bucks, we'll get into why P-Bucks is better in the next slide. But P-Bucks is good in the next slide. 0 for Defect, you don't care about Defect relics. And 4 for Watcher, because Akabeko is ridiculous on this character. But why is Akabeko ridiculous? And why is so many why is Strength good? Why are all these things good? Wound. Wound is ridiculous. Wound is the best speedrun card, and there's no other card that can really replicate what it does. It channels all your energy and all your damage. So it channels all your energy into straight pure damage, which also scales more and more with strength. Now, there's no other card that's that efficient for speedrunning. Maybe there's cards that can kill single enemy targets quick, but they can't do AoE. Maybe there's AoE cards that can like do damage to all the enemies quick, like Immolate, but that doesn't channel any energy into it and doesn't scale as much off of strength. Wand does all of these things and more. Also, it's uncommon, so you can reliably find it pretty early, as opposed to like Immolate or something like that, which isn't unlocked anyway, mind you. Just saying. But yep, a lot of relics and cards scale off of a lot of cards and relics help Wand do the thing it needs to do, which is kill all the enemies very quickly. But what are those? What are those cards? Well, first off here we got Bloodletting. Just it gens 3 energy on upgrade, which is a it's double damaged for Wound, right? If you're assuming you have like 3 energy, right? It goes from 3 energy to 6 energy. A big damage increase. Also helps it scale more for strength. It's just ridiculous, really. You can find it pretty early, again, as an uncommon card. And it's not terrible before you get wound, because you can also find like draw cards like Offering and Battle Trance that help you add, well, it helps you draw cards, and you need Bloodling to play all the strikes in your hand, or bash them in your hand, or whatever, right? Double tap, you know, is basically a Bloodling, but again, and this in doubles tap scales more of how much energy you have, right? So let's say you have a 6 energy wound after you play a Bloodling plus, and you initially have 3 energy, right? Double tap changes that from a 6 energy wound to a 10 energy wound, which is a pretty big increase. It's a lot of card plays, but again, you know, if it secures the kill, it secures the kill, which is faster than just playing a few cards, right? And not getting the kill. Playing less cards and getting your kill, not getting your kill, rather. Double tap is a rare card, which means you're probably not going to find it early. But if you do, it's nice pre-wound still. Like, getting a double bash off is quite a bit of damage, and also it reliably keeps the vulnerable on the enemy. Overall, just a decent card. Flex, 0 cost, doesn't reduce the damage of wound by getting rid of energy, unlike every other strength card. You know, it's nice. It's also common. You're going to find these a lot, and strikes enjoy them. Bash, strike, you know. A common play, if you take a flex early, which you probably will, is flex, bash, strike, which is quite a bit of damage, assuming they're all upgraded. If they're not upgraded, then it's like not too much, but that helps you clear most hard Act 1 encounters, early Act 1 encounters as well. That would usually take quite a while without it. Seeing Red kind of sucks without compared to Bloodletting, because what Bloodletting can do, you can redraw into with Offering and Battle Trance, and that's really good. Let's say you have Bloodletting, Wound, and a Battle Trance in hand, and that's your entire deck for some reason, which that's kind of common of a scenario, to be honest. Assuming you have a lot of deck thin, right? Let's say you play Bloodletting and then Wound. That is not too much damage. It's like, what, 48? That doesn't kill a lot of enemies in Act 2. But with the power of being able to redraw with like a Battle Trance or something, you can play Bloodletting, Battle Trance Bloodletting, and then you can play the Wound for what, 72? That's a lot of enemies that you just kill by being able to play the Bloodletting again. But Seeing Red doesn't allow you to do that. Instead, Seeing Red removes that kind of utility and replaces it with speed. Bloodletting has a longer animation than Seeing Red, and Seeing Red exhausts, right? So you can play it and then play Wound, and then later on, you draw into one less card later on to, which is quicker. The main thing is, it has a quicker animation compared to Bloodletting. Doesn't also doesn't provide as much energy, which is a little bit of an issue, but you know, sometimes you take what you can get if you don't find the Bloodletting. Next up is Limit Break. I don't use this personally. I think it's a waste of a rare slot, and also introduces 2 other cards that clutter up the card selection. But if you're going for more consistent runs but slower times, then I think Limit Break is a decent choice. You know, let's say it's kind of like playing a flex for one more energy, but it also retains throughout the turns and scales pretty quickly over multiple turns, which can be nice if your deck isn't like super fast, but you need to reliably kill the enemies. This is like typically a strat and 4 character, that way you do run one unlock on Ironclad just so you have Limit Break, so you can play like flex and maybe a spot weakness even into Limit Break, and then you can keep that scaling with like a headbutt and a Battle Trance. That is kind of something that is common in 4 character, but I don't think it's really great for single character. But you can still use it in single character, it's not terrible. And finally is Thunderclap. Thunderclap, it's a long animation, only applies 1 vulnerable, so it doesn't carry over multiple turns. But if you need that extra damage for Wound, it also doesn't apply to Donodeka, which is the boss you're going to fight as Ironclad. You know, I didn't mention this before, but the boss you're going to fight, a slime boss, Collector, and then Donodeka. And Donodeka, they each have 2 artifact and A0, right? So, by virtue, Thunderclap only, you know, being a long animation, costing 1, and, you know, not doing too much for you in terms of damage, you know. I don't know what those noises are, to be honest. I don't think it's super great, but if you need the extra damage push against some enemies, I think it's worth it. And you can also pick an Act 1 fairly easily. It's a common card, so you have quite a few opportunities to pick it realistically. So yeah, those are typically what you find for damage supplements. Now, how do you draw into all these cards together? That's a problem you find a lot with these damage supplements, right? It's a case where you have one on the other hand. You have either the whirlwind or the actual damage supplements in hand. That's something you find quite often, especially in Slime Boss, because Slime Boss adds 3 slime to your deck, which, you know, clogs your draw power a little more. Well, offering and Battle Trance, those are basically your own options. These are the only 0-cost draw cards that Ironclad actually has, which is annoying, admittedly, you know. But they're both serviceable in their own right. But what they do, other than consistency, is help you redraw into the cards you just played. So you play like Flex, Bloodletting, and then you can play an Offering or a Battle Trance to redraw into those cards again, and then play one for very big value. That's super nice, right? But, you know, it's consistency boosting when you have a fat draw power, and it's, you know, more damage objectively when you have a smaller one, which, you know, is great. So these cards you should probably be on the lookout for as well. But what if you don't want to use one? What if you're a little bit of a rebel? What if you want to be a little memey? What if your run's not going super well early? But no, what if it's going well early, but you just don't have the whirlwind? Here comes the meme damage cards. I'm going to really only talk about Sword Boomerang here, because the other ones are very questionable. Heavy Blade's also only on unlock level 1, so you have to take it with Lemon Break and Spot Weakness, of course. Main one here is Sword Boomerang though. This is potentially more energy efficient than Whirlwind on a single enemy. The problem is, against multiple enemies, it sucks ass unless you can play it multiple times with like a double tap, and then you can Battle Trance into it again and then play it twice. And it only really becomes good after Strength, unlike Whirlwind, where Whirlwind Plus in Act 1 is super good on its own right, except against Slime Boss, where you probably need something else with it. Nice part about Sword Boomerang, you can take multiple of them and play multiple per turn, unlike Whirlwind, unless you have Chemex for Whirlwind, but, you know. Sometimes you take multiple Whirlwinds because you want the consistency in your deck anyway. If you find multiple Whirlwinds, that is, which, yeah, it's not super common that you find multiple, but if you find multiple, then you take them. In Act 1, if you have a fat deck. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and that sucks, but you really need to play for Chemex sometimes, you know. But yep, Sword Boomerang, you really only take it if you have like good relics and like a Flex and a Battle Trance. And then you have to kind of, it's kind of like a lifeline before you get the Whirlwind. If you don't find the Whirlwind later on with Sword Boomerang, you do lose a lot of time. Heavy Blade, bad. And the rest of these don't even scale much off of Strength. Bludgeon's funny, you can sometimes take it for Slime Boss with something like a Fiendfire. Well, it's kind of like, it's Fiendfire adjacent, where you can take it for Slime Boss to kill it quicker. And I think that's a cool strat, you know, it's like the last shot before Slime Boss, you can pick a Bludgeon just to kill it a little quicker, even if you have the Whirlwind already. Because, you know, it's just one more card you have to remove later on, which is fine. Because the time it saves is probably enough to justify it, you know? And this is only something I'm going to do for Ironclad, because I don't know the characters as well. But it's just a Relic Tierlist. It might not be, like, completely good, and it's not really in any specific order. But hey. So, top tip, almost essential. You almost always want this. If not always want this, you, like, it's a, I mean, most of the relics that you want are, like, in the top few tiers, right? But these ones you really want for a really good run. But why is P-Box here? Doesn't P-Box just transform all your strikes and defense? Well, my kids, here's Pandora's box glitch. Pandora's box glitch is, instead of transforming all your strikes and defense, it gets rid of them. Now, when I mentioned strategies before, right, you want to have a small deck, and you want to be able to play your cards consistently every single fight. And sometimes you want to redraw into your supplement cards for your Whirlwind or whatever. Pandora's box glitch is a free ticket to that, basically. And also, you can find it fairly commonly given, you know, it's like, what, a 9% chance against Slime Boss? Something like that? 7% to get it from the end of Act 1 boss, without, like, a boss relic swap from Niao. But yep, this glitch, I'm going to be explaining, like, the very simple version of it. There's more complicated ones out there. Well, this is, like, the most common one for newbies, basically. Anyone can do this glitch. Even non-speedrunners do this glitch sometimes to just make, to get minimalist. Basically, when the cards appear on screen, you click the settings menu, and then you click Abandon Run. Now that might seem like counterintuitive, it might seem like bait, but this puts up another screen, which puts up, do you want to do this? That's the menu it puts up, right? And then you just click escape on your keyboard twice after that, and then it gets rid of all the cards. Now this is a glitch named Screen Layer Skip, which can be used in other places, but the most common usage of it is Pandora's Box glitch. There's other methods of Pandora's Box glitch, main one being controller map scroll skip, where you mash the preceding one on your controller, and then you open map when you get into the next act to skip all the cards anyway, and then you can click on a node to go to the next, floor. The next map node to go to, like, the next encounter, which will be at the start of the act. Yeah, that's Pandora's Box glitch. Incredibly useful. It's almost essential. You don't necessarily need it for a good run, or like world record or whatever. But if you get it, it's much easier to get one. Yeah, after that, Nielselman, I don't know. Like it saves, I would say, like a minute off of every run that has it, because you don't need to fight 3 encounters with your base deck essentially. And you can get through card rewards much quicker to find a whirlwind or a damage supplement for whirlwind, and it really accelerates you into mid Act 1, which is where you want to be, or late Act 1. Sometimes it gets you a bus snipe if you're masochistic enough to reset for that, but most of the time it doesn't do that. It's like a 1-500 to get a bus snipe if you use some like crazy tricks we will probably discuss in the next guide. But yep, super good relic, and you get this every single run. If you don't pick an element, you're adding on a minute for your run. That's just a constant. Jusu, I'd say this is the 3rd best, or maybe the 2nd best. No, I would say the 3rd best speedrunning relic overall. So combats, you want to avoid them like the plague. That's what you regularly want to do, right? Because combats take time, especially if your deck's not great. So by taking less combats, you save more time. That is basically it, and Juzu helps you take less combats because it prevents, the question marks from being combats in the first place. Same with Tiny Chest, except it's just 1/4 of the time as opposed to, every single time you go into a node, it just maybe prevents it, depending on, like, your node chances. Wing Boots. Wing Boots are a very big double-edged sword, I've seen. So typically, when you're doing a run, you just mash into chest, you pick up the relic and go on. Problem with this, with controller, which I've discussed in my last guide video, I'll probably put like the eye thing in the top right corner of the video, if I remember. This can either save you from fighting multiple encounters, or if you mash into it with controller and then pick it up and then move on to the next node, instead of going to the node that like you were planning on going on, it will automatically select the middle node out of the next row, which most of the time will fuck you over and put you on a node you don't want to be on. And additionally to that, it prevents you from doing certain tricks, because some tricks you're forced to mash in them, but Wing Boots puts you on a path you don't want to be on after that, so you have to do some crazy weird thing, or do a suboptimal play in order to account for that. But when Wing Boots is good, it's really good. You save multiple encounters that you would have been otherwise forced into. Consistency, P-Box is obviously this, but, P-Box is just so much better than all of these, to be honest. Nice thing about Centennial Puzzle, you can play with Bloodletting to actually draw cards, or, Offering to draw 8 cards, considering if the Offering's upgraded, instead of just 5 or 3 if the Offering's not upgraded. It's kind of nice, but sometimes it's just a very long animation, so it's not super great. But yeah, most of these aren't super great. I also put Ori here in Consistency Boots, because it helps you, like, find your damage supplements or the whirlwind itself, if you find it, really. But it becomes bad later on. This next Relic, they're just damage, basically. There's 2 things to mention here, though, that are, like, weird. Prismatic Shard. If you don't get the Wrath card, it's fucking awful. It sometimes prevents you from getting more scaling than you would otherwise want. But if you get Crescendo, which you can find fairly commonly, it's a common card, right? Then it's broken. It is legitimately broken. It's like a free Necronomicon, essentially. From shop, which you find fairly easily, right? I've found many Prismatic Shards over my runs. But not a lot of them I've been able to purchase, because I've usually gotten them like early Act 1. But if you get it in its ideal scenario, it's super good. Cauldron, it can, you really buy this in Act 1 if you need damage for Slime Boss, which you usually do. Potions against Slime Boss are fucking essential. And Cauldron can provide these for you, right? It gives you a wide selection. Sometimes it completely whiffs, but when it's good, it's really good. And it's a certain little a smoke bomb, I've heard, that skips encounters, which is really helpful as Cauldron. There's also a glitch-related smoke bomb. We'll get into that next video. Maybe we won't even go too deep into that video. It kind of deserves its own video, smoke bomb, with the amount of shenanigans it can do. Yep, next row. These relics, they're just less damage than the other ones. Next thing to mention about Coffee Dripper, if all of your cards are upgraded, then you don't even need to look at the... You don't even need to rest at your... You don't need to do anything at those rest nodes. You can just go into open map, click the next node. You don't even do... you can't do anything, so the game just forces you along. But you don't have to wait for the preceding one to show up either. You just go on. Ice Cream is useful against Slime Boss if you're just waiting for your Wallon to show up, because your deck is usually fat at that time, so you just like wait over multiple times. Also, Ice Cream allows you to just play all your energy cards beforehand without even caring if they're like in the same hand as Wallon or not, which is super nice. The rest of these, you really don't care about too much. Next roll of these is a little teaser for the next guide, as it were. But yep, these are just glitches. So you should be on the lookout, but you probably... there should be a spreadsheet that explains glitches and like what these relics relate to them. I probably should link that in the description, huh? It's not... I don't know if it's finished or not yet, but... Yeah, we'll see. I'll see at the end of this recording. And the last relics, these are actively bad. I don't think these are in any specific order, but yeah, these either cut the consistency of your deck, or they just make your deck slower. For example, you know, Mark of Pain adds 2 wounds. Even if it gives you energy, it doesn't really matter, because you'd rather take any other energy relic over it. Except for maybe Sozu. Sozu prevents you from getting good damage potions, and also Smoke Bomb, which are really beneficial, and probably save more time than having 1 more energy in a lot of cases. Gamma Chip, you have to remember to click it at the beginning of every fight, and even if you do that efficiently, you still lose time by having it on your body. Self-forming Claim, especially if you're playing things like Offering and Bloodletting, this loses you a lot of time. Dreamcatcher, you're resting most of the time if you don't have Coffee Dripper, and resting is much faster than smithing, especially if you use like a rest skip thing. With Dreamcatcher, you have to remember to open map twice in order to move to the next node. Otherwise, you'll pick up a card that you don't want, and then your deck will be considerably fatter than it should be, especially if you've already P-Box glitched. So, Karen's Ashes is just a super long animation. Even if it does damage, it doesn't really matter. The damage doesn't matter a lot of the time, because you just want to kill the enemy turn 1 anyway, and you're going to do that without Karen's Ashes anyway. So it just loses you time, because the animation is super slow for some reason. Same with Champion's Bolt. The weak doesn't matter. And Sneko's Eye, it completely screws over your consistency. That's what Snecko does. Yep, that's the relic tier list I've done to for Ironclad. I've done it only specifically for Ironclad because a lot more relics help Ironclad than relics on the other characters do. Like, Akabeko doesn't do anything for Silent, and you don't even run it on Silent. You don't run Watcher level 4 on Silent. Brimstone isn't even a thing on other characters. You know, it's just the whole shebang, right? Speaking of Silent, here's this tier list. The main idea with Silent is getting Grand Finale. That necessitates the use of, like, Unlock Level 5, right? Having Grand Finale and a small deck, usually as a result of P-Box glitching. And the thing about Silent, she has Ring of Serpent, which allows you you draw 7 cards on 1 instead of just 5. Which allows you to take more damage cards than you usually would, which is good, because you need damage cards against Slime Boss, because Silent does not do well against Slime Boss a lot of the time. But yep, 0501, you get Grand Finale, you get your P-Box, that's what you want. And 1 Watcher, because if you get Prismatic Shot into Blasphemy, it's super nice. 221, again, like Ironclad. Slime Boss, Collector, Donatica, just faster. Grand Finale, just, it's an AoE card. 60 damage, AoE, just slam it down. You can redraw into it with another card. Problem with Silent, the main strategy with her, you just get to the end of Act 1. If you have a Grand Finale and like a 7 card or lower deck, or a consistent way to play a Grand Finale by drawing into the Grand Finale, that is what you're aiming for. If you don't have that, you most likely reset the run if you're going for a good time. So yep, that's the main idea with Grand Finale. You can, if you pick a Grand Finale in Act 1, it's usually useless unless you have a Gambler's Brew or something to guarantee that you can play against Slime Boss and just kill it instantly. Or like do a big dent into it. That's usually how Grand Finale in Act 1 goes. Yeah, but usually it's a curse. Terror, just, you want this after Act 1 as well. It's not just an Act 1 card for Slime Boss, which a lot of the other cards in this tier list are. Glass Knife, really big damage. It's the Massive Stab, super spammable. All-out attack is just big AoE, which it's ideal with a Stag Spray or something like that. Backstab, again, super spammable. All of these cards in A tier, well, not A tier, good damage cards for Hallways and Slime in Act 1. Those are really good, those are ideal. Now, think about Grand Finale, only does 60 AoE, which isn't enough to kill enemies, especially in Act 3. So you need to replay the card. So the idea is, you play Grand Finale, you play a draw card, you play Grand Finale again, you play a draw card to draw the initial draw card you played, and Grand Finale again, you play Grand Finale again. Sorry, you play the draw card again, then you play Grand Finale, and then you keep that cycle going or whatever, right? Now, all of these cards in the middle tier do that for you. Some of these are better than others. Some just have like a discard menu, or like don't draw as much. Think about Quick Slash, it's also a damage card for Act 1, which makes it super convenient to pick. And this second to last tier, you know, if you're really desperate for damage and you have like a super good run going into Slime Boss, you just take them. Because killing Slime Boss quicker at that stage is really, you know, that's your last obstacle for the run. Like, let's say you have a Grand Finale and like a couple of good damage comments, but you need like one more to securely kill it, right? Then, you know, these are your options. Yeah, this second to last tier. And, well, third to last, technically, but these Survivor and Neutralize, you want to get rid of Survivor as early as you can. That's the main thing about Silent, right? P-Box doesn't get rid of Survivor, because it's not a strike and defend, obviously, right? So you just get rid of it as early as you can. Because if you accidentally play it, it's another menu, and it sucks. Neutralize is slightly better, at least it does damage, but, you know, after you have the Grand Finale and shit, it's basically worthless. And everything else, trash. Complete trash. That's the thing you'll be noticing over these next few character descriptions. Most of these things aren't great. Most of the cards aren't great. You're only looking for a select few. Defect. Main strategy here: play Hyper Beam a lot. Play a lot. Now, for Hyper Beam, unfortunately, you have to go to Defect level 3, which means you have to take a lot of card clutter on the way, which means your card selections won't be as like, you know, they won't be as accurate or precise as you want them to be. Which means there will be more cards to pull, which means it will be harder to find all the cards you want. But main idea, again, deck thin down to like Hyper Beam, and then you can draw it again and play it again. And do the cycle thing. You're going to be noticing a lot. You have this one damage card that you play over and over again. 2-2-1 once again. Because, you know. Actually, this should be 0531 rather. I don't think Ubler updated that though. I don't know yet. But that doesn't matter yet. Because undeniably, Hyper Beam is just a worse Grand Finale. It costs 2, it does less damage, and it disables your orbs. Which, I mean, you won't care about the orbs later on anyway, but early on, if you have a Hyper Beam, you just sometimes feel bad because you accidentally played it first, and then you played dual cast, and you don't get lethal on the enemy, which you would have if you just played it in the correct order. But yep, that's the idea with Defect. You just play Hyper Beam, all these cards in the middle tier, it helps you redraw into the Hyper Beam, or play it for more, like in the case of Beam Cell. But, you know, if you don't find the Hyper Beam, you still need some damage for Slime Boss, and, you know, Act 1 in general, and this middle tier can help you with that. And if you've already gotten your Pew, which is, you know, Hyper Beam, then you just get rid of Zap and Dual Cast, because they are more than curses. They are curses compared to Strike and Event. At least Strikes can do damage. These two can't after you have, like, after you've played Hyper Beam twice. So yeah, that's basically Defect. I kind of skimmed over them because, you know, I don't know nearly as much, but there's not really much to go into Defect. You know, you just play Hyper Beam, you redraw into it, you play Hyper Beam. Finally, Watcher. She has the narrowest thing, but that's because she doesn't really need as many cards. Well, I mean, I feel like Ironclad is like a more linear thing, but Watcher is definitely the second most linear. Now, Watcher, unlock levels 04, 01, or 4. See, by going to unlock level 4 to get Akabeko, which is really good for like, the big card that you really want, which is Ragnarok, you have to take a few rares on the way. I think it's like 3, which is like Spirit Shield, Alpha, and something else. I can't really remember them. But it makes getting Ragnarok and Blasphemy a lot less consistent. So yeah, that's why you run 1 or 4. I think at this point for the meta, you run 4 because you want faster times, even if they're less consistent. But if you want more consistent runs that are potentially so, you run 1 unlock. And a thing that differentiates Watcher even more is that She runs 2 against, which means she fights Time Eater instead of Donodeka. Now, this is important, right? Her main damage card isn't AoE, unlike the rest of the characters. You know, it's Ragnarok, it's random hit. And Time Eater has, like, what, 20 less HP than Donodeka combined? Which is, Donodeka combined is usually what it's gonna be, right? For Watcher to deal with them. So yeah, she fights Time Eater instead because it's just faster for her. Even if Time Eater is a little inconvenient, especially with its half health, full health. Well, it goes when it gets half health, it does a buff. And then if it actually gets to play that intent, then it just heals a half health. But typically you just want to kill it turn 1 or 2 anyway with the power of potions. But you know, we'll get into that. Ragnarok, first off, great card. Beautiful. Beautiful. This card on upgrade does 6 damage 6 times, which scales a lot with the Watch's main mechanic, which is just double damage. So in effect, basically, right, this is 72 damage on a single card for 3 mana, which isn't great for Watcher standards, usually normal Watcher gameplay, but in a speedrun, having that amount of burst in one card is insane. But you need to still supplement this damage somehow, right? And these 4 cards really help you do that. So, Blasphemy, instead of doubling the damage, which Wrath does, it triples it, and also provides you more energy to play more cards. This is really good. This is the second best card that Watcher can get, really. You just play a Blasphemy, and then you play Wreath, and then Ragnarok. Speaking of Wreath of Flame, this on upgrade boosts the damage of each hit of Ragnarok by 8 damage, which is doubled to 12, which is doubled to 18 more damage for each hit. If you're like in Crescendo, if you're in your Wrath or Divinity respectively. Again, that's just such an insane damage boost that is more than doubling the damage of Ragnarok in one card play, which is super important when Time Eater has 480 health. Crescendo is probably 3rd best. On upgrade, this is 0 cost, which is the main thing, right? And it's a common card. You can find it early. Again, you know, super good. Just doubling your damage and being able to save that for like a turn where you actually want to do double damage rather than like playing it and then taking double damage from the enemy in one turn. You know, it's convenient. And when you have a fatter deck. When you have a thinner deck, it's still good though. Again, 0 cost. You can, let's say you've taken your Pandora's box and you've glitched, right? You only have Crescendo, Ragnarok, and a Wreath of Flame in deck. And Watch starts with Holy Water, which basically gives her 4 energy for 1 turn. If this Crescendo didn't upgrade to 0 cost, it would be, you could only play Crescendo, then Rag, or Wreath, then Rag. But because it upgrades to 0 cost, you Miracle, Crescendo, Wreath of Flame, Ragnarok. And Watch's starting card Eruption is basically Crescendo, but, you know, 1 cost. It's fucking ridiculous they gave her a card that does double damage, which is really important for Act 1, because she can destroy everything in Act 1. Doesn't mean you want to take more encounters, but it means that you can take more encounters more comfortably if you're like a middle level runner. You can always save more time later in the run. But Act 1 is usually consistently like a 130, which you can't really say about the other characters. It's always 130 or less for Watcher, right? Because she just that much damage against Slime Boss and shit. And Scroll, this is really a backup option if you don't get as many removes as you'd like to, which is typically when you don't get P-Bucks. Let's say, the end of Act 1, you have Blasphemy and Ragnarok somehow, with some other crazy shit, but you don't get P-Bucks. But the rare card selection has a Scroll. You pick the Scroll. Even if you get the P-Bucks after you pick the Scroll end of Act 1, you can still replay a Wreath of Flame. Like, let's say, Blasphemy, Wreath of Flame, Scroll, Wreath of Flame, Ragnarok. That is a lot of damage, and that kills Time Eater, I think. Don't quote me on that. But it should. That should kill Time Eater. But even if it doesn't, it'll put a huge dent, and, you know, by the power of potions, you probably find, like, that extra little inch that you need. But yep, Scroll's insane, and those are, like, the main supplement cards for Ragnarok. There's not that many, because that doesn't need to be many. The main supplements that you actually want are, like, these damage cards. You know, in this next tier here, going down. These cards, you pick pre-Ragnarok. Post-Ragnarok, you might pick them if you like need an extra little inch of damage, but you probably most likely don't because you want to draw into this, you know, Blasphemy, Wreath, and Ragnarok consistently. These cards, all of them do big damage. Concludes, I think, the best one because this helps with fights that Ragnarok can't deal with usually. Let's say Darklings in Act 3. It's an AoE fight. Each of them have like 56 HP, average. or something like that. They have 50-ish HP. Conclude in Blasphemy does 48, but even if it doesn't, you can just like, even if you're in Wrath, right, you can play Crescendo, Ragnarok, then Conclude, and then just, yeah, you probably kill most enemies. Especially with Relics helping you out in the damage department. Crush Joints, Vulnerable. Vulnerable is insane on Watcher. They didn't give him many tools for Vulnerable for a reason, because multiplicative like damage scaling, you have 2 times from your Wrath stance and then 1.5 times from Vulnerable. That's insane. But they gave a Crush Joints for some reason, and it's a common card. So you can find this fairly consistently, and you can always proc its secondary effect of applying to Vulnerable. And this is why fighting Time Eater is important over fighting Donut Decker. Time Eater does not have Artifact. So you can like Blasphemy, Crush Joints, Wreath of Flame, Ragnarok. That's a kill, probably. Again, don't quote me on this, but it gets you very close. Or if not, just outright killing Time Eater. Will kick, big damage. If you don't pick this off the Ragnarok though. God Realities and grow a lot of damage. Brilliance is like a mediocre damage common that it's still damage. If you find an Act 20, take it because it's 24 damage in Wrath. Follow up, it's basically a free card. You're only playing attack, so even if it eats up a draw, it's free in a kind of loose sense. Consecrate is kind of like enough Conclude, but you can spam it a lot more, which makes it kind of more takeable than Conclude after taking a Ragnarok. Because, again, it deals with those fights that Ragnarok really can't, or like gets you the inch that Ragnarok needs to actually kill those AoE fights. Sig Move is your B plan, mainly. You really don't take this after taking Ragnarok. It's pretty awful after taking Ragnarok, really. It's a curse. But if you don't have a Ragnarok, this card is serviceable in Blasphemy, or in Divinity rather, but Divinity is only going to come from the Blasphemy, let's face it, or it's going to come from the Potion Ambrosia. It does 120. That's a lot of damage. And a good thing about it, it's 2 costs as opposed to 3, which allows it to be more playable with something like Scroll or a Wheel Kick. Let's say you Blasphemy, and then you play Sig Move. Sorry, you play... it's just a lot of damage in one card. It also ups for Slime Boss to some extent, because it's, again, 120 damage in Divinity, 80 damage in Wrath. Incredible. Bowling Bash is really a very copium option, I'd say. If you don't have any other damage commons going into Slime, you might as well pick it, because, you know, it's basically another copy of Strike, and after the split, it hits multiple times. And Vigilance, I know it may seem strange to get rid of the only way to get out of Wrath, but you want to be in Wrath permanently anyway. The second you see Eruption in your hand, you're gonna play, even if it means taking 20 damage that turn. So getting rid of Vigilance is really good, because if you accidentally play Vigilance, it's just bad. But even if you'd never play it, it's still bad, because you don't want to play it anyway. It's a card you have to avoid. And getting rid of it, it also doesn't get removed by P-Bucks. So getting rid of it is pretty recommended, because it always gets you that deck slim you want, even after P-Bucks. Everything else, complete trash. Trash. Most of the Watcher's cards are usually like stance switching or bonuses from Scry. You don't care about Scry, you don't care about any of that. You just care about playing Blasphemy, Wreath of Flame, Ragnarok with a thin-ass deck or the Scroll, which is simulating a thin-ass deck essentially. But there's one card that isn't in any of these characters' pools that is very important to all of them. All of these characters want it. But none of these bitches have this kind of power in their kit. And it's the best tech of all time. It's the best thing. It appears fairly often, and its name is Trip Plus. Trip Plus. Well, you'll find it mostly as Trip Minus, but Trip Plus applies 2 vulnerable to all the enemies. Now, every single one of these strategies, except for Watcher, but she still appreciates this because, she doesn't have many vulnerable in a kit other than Crush Joints. This is insane. This single-handedly... It just boosts the damage of your kits by 1.5 times, which sometimes is the push you need. Especially for Silent, it allows you to play Grand Finale less amount of times. For Defect, it allows you to play Hyper Beam for less times, which is good because you usually can't play Hyper Beam that many times in a deck. For Watcher, it gives her vulnerable. For Ironclad, which isn't a thing she has that often. For Ironclad, it's better than Thunderclap. It's like the best version of Thunderclap for Ironclad. This shit does 2 vulnerable. It's 0 cost, so you can easily replay it over and over again with Battle Transfer Offering to strip the artifact from Donodeke, like all of it, and you just get to kill him without playing as many damage supplements. It's a fairly quick animation, and it helps throughout every single stage of the game. You can buy this super early on, and it'll be very, very efficient. on all of the characters. But yep, that's all for this guide. Next time we'll be discussing most of the glitches, especially, you know, we'll be getting down dirty with the base level. Well, we won't get down dirty. We're gonna just get an overview of all the glitches, the main important ones, really. But yeah, I hope you derived any form of information from this. I hope you did. And that's all. So, see ya!